The Portland is Home team talks real estate. Whether you live here or you're on your way, Audra and Andrew Galler work hard to welcome you home. They make the whole real estate process attainable, educational, and fun. After all, it is the biggest transaction of your life. The Portland is Home team talks real estate. I'm Michelle Odell, your host. And now, Audra and Andrew Galler.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, everybody. We are in the beginning of October already. October 6th. We'll be publishing this tomorrow. It'll be the 7th. And of course, what's going on with the market? We're going to have the market minute coming up in a minute. We also were going to talk today. I never thought we'd ever hear these words coming out of our mouths, but are we in a buyer's market now?
Man, well, first of all, I think that the segue into it would be, I can't believe, if I were going to do an ad right now, I would say, I can't believe it's not summer. First of all, to harken back some kind of food product from the 70s. Because, wow, where'd it go?
I can't believe it's not summer. We were away and I left in summertime and I came home and it's fall. So I was gone for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, Portland became an autumn
Well, I understand you were in Greece, which
correct.
Surveys have shown me that's where donuts were first made, in Greece.
Really?
They were first made in Greece.
That?
See what I did?
Oh,
See?
God. Oh, God. Groan.
Oh,
I'm waiting all day for that joke. I'm waiting all day. That's it.
That was it.
Sorry, everyone.
That was it. That's the funny one.
Trying to-
That's how
All right,
funny
that's
we are.
good. So let's talk business here. Of course, let's start with the market
minute.
It's Andrew Galler's Market Minute.
Going crazy. Well, okay, market minute, short story. Unlike the last 85,000 years of our lives, now supply is up, demand is down. Like a market eighth of a minute. It's crazy. That's pretty much it.
That's the market
minute.
minute.
So I'll kidding aside. The market has shifted. I've been really parsing a lot of data. Coming in early, staying late, ordering food in. There's nothing but cartons everywhere. A few of them have chopsticks in it, other big pizza cartons just piled up. And what we're seeing is I don't think this is a surprise to anybody in our astute listening audience, because you're all so smart. Again, just to recap, at the beginning of 2022, interest rates were about 3.1%, and then in June, they shot up to 6.25-ish, settled back down a little bit over the summer, then now they're back up on the rise. So what we see when we've been looking at market data, trying to console and advise our clients with pricing, it's very hard. Everything is so fluid right now and volatile that we're just seeing it's really difficult to try to advise people what should we do, because all the data is not really relevant. If something closes today on the 6th of October, that buyer and seller got into contract, right? Agreed to terms and conditions 6 weeks ago, which is the end of August. And so that market had already begun to decelerate, but it hadn't yet. So now we're seeing things sitting on the market longer. For the first time since March 2020, buyers can actually sleep on it. We are seeing some multiple offer situations, but when we do see them, it's 2, maybe 4 offers, not like when you were looking 60. So it's just a much different market, and all of it just like when you came back. Summer, boom, fall. It's just like that. It's not like that, but it feels like that, because when we're in these conversations with our sellers right now, when we began some of these conversations, it was May, June, July, prepping their house, whammy. Now it's October. So that's the market minute in conclusion. Mm-hmm.
So today's episode is all about, like I said, I never thought it would ever be a buyer's market. And you're asking, is it a buyer's market?
Is it
a buyer's market? Or is that just, what is that? Double speak?
Well, let's talk a little bit about definitions. Again, on the same page. What's the difference between a buyer's and a seller's market? What's the demarcation? How does one know? Where are we? And so traditionally speaking, if we were to take a casual poll among realtors or, people in the real estate world, you would hear a resounding conclusion that 6 months of inventory is a buyer's market. Below 6 months, seller's market. Over 6 months, buyer's market.
Okay.
I would question that definition because I think that that definition was established and casually agreed upon in past times. And what I mean is there was a time when I first began and the internet wasn't what it is, that you or any consumer could not see all the houses on the market. You really needed a real estate agent to, they used to print the book twice a month. And that's where all the listings were. And you look in the newspaper, just like movie times. You have to go get the newspaper. Or remember you have to call that phone line and sit there. And so anyway, I think that was 6 months was established as a rule of thumb long ago. And now that everything is so instantaneous, I don't know what the new demarcation is for that definition, but I would argue it's much less because you all can see everything on the market more or less with a few, but very few exceptions, the minute it comes on the market. You can see every price change. You can see everything I see. And you probably see it more. By you, I mean every buyer out there and seller because you have your apps all set up. They alert you the moment anything happens that you've told it to alert you to. So we will find out later, I think, in coming years, what it all means. Okay, but that aside, I think that when I look at the data of the zip codes I focus on, which are the inner Portland zip codes. So these numbers are different than what people in my listening audience will hear about the Portland metro market because I'm excluding a lot of the rural areas. I'm excluding condos for these numbers. So just know when you hear other numbers that are slightly different, that's why, okay? I've excluded foreclosures, which there still aren't a lot of, but just to keep it consistent. So these are all the inner zip codes, not including Beaverton, Vancouver, Gresham, but just inner Portland, okay? So right now we're seeing September 2022, right? This last September versus September 2021, there's 49.8% more homes on the market. So 50% more, let's just say. 50% more homes on the market in the month of September just now versus last year. That's crazy. So
that is crazy.
1,255 homes versus 838. So that is how many homes are in the area I monitor most closely. So that's a gauge of supply, let's say. A gauge of pending sales, which we'll call demand, is down 41.6%. So supply is up by half. Demand is down by half. Yeah, not quite, but let's just use round numbers, right? And here's the craziest thing. Is that new listings, the listings that, new homes coming on the market in September 2022 over 2021 is down 21%. So
you're going to have to explain this. Why is this happening? What's going on?
The first shocking thing I would say is,
what's going on?
Do you remember last year we were talking and we had these endless conversations about how we all were reading in the news and talking amongst ourselves and sharing experiences about our friends and ourselves. There's nothing on the market. We can't get anything, on and on and on. And the reality of it is that it was not the case, and we talked about this last year, that there were not, I try not to use double negatives, but I'm going to, so double negative alert, everybody. It's not the case that there were no listings coming on. The difference is that there was so much demand that it would just get absorbed. It got sucked up. It got consumed so quickly. For every house coming on, there were 5 million buyers, right? So now what's happening is, to answer your question, Michelle, what's happening is that, again, in January of this year, interest rates were 3.1%. July 2021, so what's that now, 14, 15 months ago, interest rates bottomed out at like 2.87%, something like that. And now they're trending right around 6.25, 6 3/8. And what does that mean? So, for instance, we have some listings that are just super quiet. Like no one's looking at them. And they're in what in times past, and by that I mean like 15 minutes ago, a very desirable price point. And that price point right now, our first-time home buyer price point, mid 500s or 500,000. In a nice part of town up in University Park, right by University of Portland. Great rental, great neighborhood to live in or to rent. And it's crickets. And when I pull up my app, we'll take another one. We have another one by Grant High School. and that's priced at $800,000. And when I look at today's interest rates at 6 3/8, the payment, if you put 20% down on $800,000, the payment today is $4,950. Okay, $800,000, 6 3/8% payment of almost, let's call it $5,000, $4,950. Okay, but if you go back to what interest rates were,
Like a year ago.
well, let's just say January
Okay.
at 3.125, 3 1/8, 3,700.
Stop it.
That's
That's
such a big-
$1,300 more a month. So my theory, this is only a theory, this is a bit anecdotal, but I think it's true, is that what one could afford, because look, the constant in this equation is the payment.
Always.
We all have a budget. If that's the constant, then the variables are the price and the interest rates, right? So when the interest rate goes up, the sales price one can afford goes down.
Right.
So the people who are looking at $800,000 in the product, the type of home that would afford one, now they're getting into homes that I think a lot of buyers are like, yeah, no, I want the level of finish, the primary suite, all the stuff that these higher price would provide, and they're going into housing stock that's substantially different for their payment based on interest rate and sales price. So if that explanation makes sense, that I think is what's happening.
So they're giving up, or they're taking a hiatus maybe from looking because they know they can't get the kind of house they want because of the interest rates. Do you think that's what's happening?
I would have our listening audience answer that question. But I mean, that's a very plausible. And I think from the seller's perspective too, that the pool of buyers, if you were to conceptualize any price point, whatever price point we're talking about, between X and X 100,000, when that interest rate goes up, that pool, of course, gets shallower. And now that the absorption rate, which is another different number, we don't talk about it because it's a little hard to explain, but the rate at which homes are coming off the market slows down, of course, that results in more homes on the market. Right now, inventory in the area I'm describing, that I'm focused on, is only it's not really all that high, and yet everyone feels what's happening. Every seller feels how much slower it is. So that's kind of what's going on. It's only like 2.5 months, which historically is low.
But not in Portland, and not in the last 2 years. But half a month for the longest time of inventory.
For the longest time.
Less than that. There was like one time we were talking, it was like 0.33 months of inventory. It was the absolute lowest. So is it a buyer's market then if the interest rates are so high and people don't have as much choice now? That's the question. Is it?
That's the question. I think that it's too early to say it's a hard buyer's market. A few realities still do exist. I think that I will say this without any hesitation and 100% belief, is that it is, with the exception of the, relatively speaking, incredibly high interest rates, the best market for buyers since March 2020. But that's a huge if. The interest rates are really debilitating for a lot of people looking for what they want. But there hasn't been a time since March 2020 that buyers could casually look and
think about it, sleep on it.
Think about it.
Yeah.
There's the up and down on that. So is it a buyer's market? I think we should all go out for drinks and debate. That's where I'm landing on that, because there's a lot of ifs and or buts, and I'm concluding on that.
Okay.
But so Andrew, did you say how many months of inventory again?
Well, so based on pending sales, which I find to be less of a lagging indicator, there's 2.3 months of inventory in these close-in zip codes. And so while that is still very low, relatively speaking, to times past, when we look at this past September versus last September when it was 0.9 months, that's an increase of 158.7%. It's like crazy.
Okay. So more people have put their homes on the market. We're trying to cash in on the crazy market we had a few months ago. Are scared of COVID and having people come through their homes. Is that part of this? more
See,
inventory?
this is what's so interesting, quotation mark fingers, because in September, there were 902 new listings in September. But when you go to last September, there was 1,152.
Okay.
So
well,
there are 21.7% fewer new listings in September, but where it doesn't, none of this is terribly relevant. It's just interesting. But the pending sales, the demand has dropped. Last September, there were 950 pending sales. And this September, there were only 555, which is 49, 50% less.
Wow.
So there's actually fewer homes coming on the market than last September. But I also think, too, that there's so much going on right now. And what I mean is this September, unlike last September, what were you doing? I can tell you what you weren't doing. You weren't going to Greece.
We weren't going anywhere.
You know what I mean? You weren't hanging out with friends. I wasn't running my kids around to all these sports. We weren't seeing people still much. I mean, more than the September before, but still not really. And, right now, I can tell you other things that we're not, quotation mark fingers, not doing, not worrying so much about dying. And like, I'm still washing my hands more than I used to, but like, I forget for a few hours every so often, and I'm out more, right? And I'm breathing, my hands and my mouth, all this stuff. So it's like there are also in this September, I would argue that like it was a nice September here in Portland, and I would argue like right now it is gorgeous out, like it's a picture perfect day. What's it like? High 70s, low 80s today?
Yeah, perfect.
I think I'd rather be taking a picnic than going looking for houses if I were not a real estate agent. So I think there's a lot of layers here. Yes, the interest rate. Yes, things are sitting in the market longer. And also, yes, we're running our kids around more. We're not so, I think that the anxiety of like, if we don't get a house right now, we might never. And they're, in 2021, it's worth noting that 12-month period, houses appreciated 20%. And there was a lot of anxiety I think we all had, like, oh my gosh, if we don't lock it up now, it's going to be how much more next month?
Right.
And so what we're also seeing is we're starting to do a lot of math research on people who bought right before the shoe fell, the second shoe or the first one, however that saying goes. And arguably they paid too much, but then did they? And what I mean is that if they got it at 4.25, what sales price would they have had to pay? Sellers are not decreasing their sales price in lockstep with interest rates.
Oh.
So it's not the case. And this is where it gets, quotation mark fingers, complicated. And I don't mean space shuttle complicated. I mean that there's like wheels spinning inside of wheels of like, how do we define a winner and a loser? Or like, we should have done this instead of that. And what I mean is that if you got something that now we may be sitting in bed trying to get to sleep thinking I paid too much, some of my clients did really well because they're not going to move for years and they're not building any homes here because there's no land in Portland, really. They're not going to start digging up the farms, that they would pay more for that house on a monthly basis, even if their sales price was lower. So, again, just, complicated. It's just not as simple as, right?
Have you seen since the last time we talked, which is probably about 6 weeks ago now, 5-6 weeks ago, have you seen like normal business as usual, even though the interest rates are up and the stock market is all over the place? Oh my goodness. What specific things are you talking to people about? And do you have the kind of the normal people calling and asking for help, and the same amount of clients? Or tell me about what's happening.
Well, I think that, I do all the listing prep and, getting the homes ready for market. And when we went through that crazy period and you could put a house up, literally have like a million offers, we still kept with the same program, which we got your home in its most beautiful state. Because I really felt like even if your home will sell immediately, I still think you're going to get more money if we do a few things to it. And that served us well because we just kept on the same program. And we are still, we're still continuing. We didn't fluctuate much off of that program. We just stayed the same and we're still doing the same thing. But now I'm in that same cycle, which it's bringing back memories of, 15 years ago where we put a house up on the market and it sits and it's gorgeous and it's perfect and it looks great, but interest rates are high and demand is lowered and, all this stuff. And so now I'm doing the things with the team saying, let's, put up new photos. Let's mix some stuff around, just really trying to get fresh eyes on houses that are sitting, because now before everyone would see the house and it didn't matter because, well, there was a frenzy to buy a home when we came out of that pandemic, basically. One thing we didn't talk about, but I feel like there's going to be a time where it comes back.
Right.
I think we're going to hit spring, and I think we're going to see business like tick up again pretty heavily. And so because of that, I'm thinking you should buy now.
Right.
And because I think it's coming again.
Right.
I think interest rates are going to drop. Andrew's been talking with folks. That's what the word on the street is. And I think that we're going to, not as bad as it was, but I think there's going to be something there. So I'm thinking, if you're looking, get yourself ready.
Get yourself
ready. So if you see something.
Okay.
What I would say about some things right now, never has there been a time, well, not never. We were very adamant about making your house showcase ready, even when the market was so frenetic. And I think now with increased competition, it's even more imperative to be able to make that, like my mom always said, right? You only get one chance to make a first impression.
That's right.
And bringing, your best game face to the party is really, I'm going to use a term, I don't really mean it like this, but never has there been a time where it's more important than right now. So not never, it's always important. Bring the best. But now that buyers do have more to look at, really about shining it up and making it just sparkle.
Okay. Has anyone said, look, we're not going to be able to get what we want because of the interest rates. We're just going to give up? Has anyone just called it quits or said they want to take a break? Are you just helping people chug along with what's going on?
We have had some buyers who the interest rates have adversely affected them enough that it knocked them out of what they needed to get. Yeah. Well, and we've been on both sides of this. Some of our listings have come back on the market because when in the typical process of home buying, a buyer person will go talk to their lender, submit all their documentation to get pre-approved for financing. They'll say, based on this, that, and the other, here's the payment's going to equate to this sales price. And then off we go. We start looking at houses. Time goes by. First, second, third, fourth round of tours. Don't find it. Okay, we find one. How much time has gone by? Was it 1 week or 6? And it is what it is. 6 weeks really isn't that long of a time to be learning about the market, finding out what your money gets you. And then we get an offer accepted. And wow, the interest rate changed. And on some of our listings, we've had this, where then the buyer then goes we make a point to talk to our buyers, lenders, as we're writing the offer. But it's an easy thing not to remember to do. Maybe it's the weekend and there's another offer coming in. Let's just lock it up. We can get our buyers out is a typical way to be, because we're the advocate for the buyer. As when we're the listing agent, the other agent is the same. So it's fair. And then the buyer goes talk to their lender and says, wow, interest rates were X and now they're X point plus 2. Can't afford it. We're out. Gosh. And it's a heartbreaker because our sellers, great, we got an offer. We're ready to go. Not so fast. So, and I think too, maybe what the words I would choose to describe what you said, Michelle, which is the same thing, but just slightly different words, is that we, in my opinion, have some buyers who have compelling needs and they're not feeling as the same compellingness as times past.
Yeah, they're rethinking the importance or the urgency now.
That, and I also think too that people are just busy again.
Okay, because it is back to
I don't
normal
know.
for the most part.
It is. I think so. I mean, they're still,
I forgot how much time I was in my car running my kids around.
Yeah.
That's my answer to is it a buyer's market. I think, time will tell. It's, I think, and we'll see what happens with all the other global events happening.
Right. Exactly.
Just talking about the listings, I just think that that's something that there are a lot of sellers that it's hard to be a seller right now. There are so many listings that are sitting right now. The only thing that I find interesting is I'm seeing price drops, but I'm also seeing homes selling for what they were asking, it just taking a lot longer.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily, I don't think, but there are some price adjustments that are starting to go on for sure.
Oh.
To kind of adjust to that interest rate.
Yeah. Do you drop in order to adjust for those? It's probably quite a bit of money based on the
Yeah,
payment.
25 to 50,000. You want to see, I've seen there's one house that we've been watching. It's been on the market for a long time and they do small incremental drops. And I just don't think it's enough to get anyone's attention because everyone's thinking, well, you're just going to drop it again in 2 weeks, another $5,000 or $10,000. It's like very small. And I think if you really want to get those buyers and you want to move that house because it is vacant now,
Right.
you need to do a big drop and you need to get the excitement out there.
Yes. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, and I think it's worth noting how everything works. And what I mean is we have all those apps. Consumers, buyers have apps. And they choose their top number based on their conversation with their lender or online calculators that one is playing with. And, when a buyer goes and talks to a lender, the lender never says you're approved up to 642, 758 and 20 cents.
Mm-hmm.
We all talk about we're approved, we're looking up to 600, 625, 650, 7, whatever, the increments of blocks of 25,000 until you get to about $1 million. Then it's about a block of 100,000.
Right.
1, 1, 1, 2. So the question for the seller is what pool do you want to, if you want to make the pool less shallow or a deeper pool, you got to get under the next large demarcation. So, is that 25, 50,000? And you could play around in between it, but it's really about trying to get into that larger pool because let's just say if you're priced at above any huge demarcation, you're invisible to all the buyers who set their apps below that number.
That's right.
And so once you go, underneath that, I would argue that you are all of a sudden visible to people who weren't looking up above that next tier. Mm-hmm. And one way we conceptualize the market is if you were to picture a triangle and do a bunch of lines parallel to the bottom line, as you go lower, this isn't rocket surgery here. The lower you go, the bigger the pool of buyers is.
Right.
Because everyone can afford zero.
That's right.
So the closer you get to that, the larger pool of buyers you have.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the thinking, and that's what we share with our clients.
Okay.
I think that this is it's still an anxietous time.
Okay.
And I think that this is hard stuff. And what's so hard, I think, is how quickly things change. And it's glacial because those last 2.5 years while we were in the middle of it seemed like it was going to be forever. And one day you come back and that's that.
We all thought that we would never go back into the office.
Right. Exactly. And
then articles started coming out saying, turns out that's a bad idea.
Right. You're keeping people settled at least, or hopeful, I guess, with what's going on.
Well, I sure do like to think I'm a lifesaver. It makes me feel good. but I also think too, all kidding aside, it's more of just problem solving. Mm-hmm. And this is once again in somewhat uncharted territory. Audra and I bought our first place in 2002 with an interest rate of 7.25. Couldn't believe what a low rate we got. Pinching ourselves. So great. Now 7.25 keeps me up at night.
Because it's all relative.
It's all relative, and just to fall back on well-worn cliches, which aren't there for no reason, the only constants change.
That's right.
A lot of what's driving everything that's happening right now is this inflation, and I think that there's a lot of pain points in what's driving the inflation. Are we going to have any scarcity of energy or gas, fuel prices? What are they going to do? And I think that's going to be a part of it because there doesn't seem to be a lot of supply bubbling out of some global situations that are occurring right now.
Right.
That's not going to help anything. What we're seeing is one of the main drivers is just, are energy costs going to stabilize? How will inflation be curtailed? I think that's a big deal. I would imagine that what we're trying to get through right now will stay with us at least until the end of the year. Okay. And next year, who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if we are going to be in a higher interest rate environment for the foreseeable future through Q1, Q2. One mortgage broker I spoke with earlier this week said he heard something. Someone adamantly argued that interest rates will go down in Q1. I asked him if he thought that was true, and we both shrugged our shoulders. We don't know, and we'll see. I will tell you this. I look forward to the day when I can get a pizza for less than $30. I mean, just fill up my car for less than $100. So, yeah, because my pastry situation is hurting, you know. I had to walk away. I was like $6.50 for like a croissant and coffee, man.
It's not okay.
It's not.
Not okay.
Any words of wisdom to send people off with?
They say for the buyers, right? Buy the house, not the interest rate. And what it means is, so I think I'd be surprised if there was a few things that weren't on the horizon. If anyone remembers what ARMs were, adjusted rate mortgages, I suspect they're going to be coming back. I don't know that, but I would not be surprised because one could get a loan. This was all the rage when interest rates got really high in times past. You could get a mortgage for 5 or 7 years. After that, it's tied to the LIBOR, which is the London Interbank something, where that rate sets all the interbank trading that the Fed also works off of. That whatever all that stuff is, that I would not be surprised if we see some lending products that will allow us to get through this, to keep payments down. Because I don't think this is going to be our world in 5 or 7 years. And I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. Also, I think we're going to start seeing loans that will amortize in 40 years based off of a 40-year amortization table instead of 30, which would also make payments lower at a higher interest rate because it's going to calculate it, for those not familiar, on a longer timeline.
Right.
So, which is the key to home ownership in America, there you go, is amortization.
Exactly. So do you really think that 40-year is gonna happen? Or is that
I do.
You do? Okay. That's gonna make a
the
big
ARMs,
difference.
I was calling around last week and this week about who's got them. Are they lower than 30-year normal, whatever you call it, vanilla loan? And they're not yet. But I'd be shocked because the lenders are all having really hard times right now because no one's refiing.
Why would they?
Which is another little wrinkle in what's happening. So they've got to come up with something, I would imagine, to have people get loans so they stay in business.
Right. I remember those ARM loads were a big shock for people who didn't understand it when they signed up for them in the first place.
Now, you really got to walk through it and talk about it. But, well, it's a gamble, like everything in life is. It's a gamble that at the end of the term, after X years, interest rates will go down. If they've gone up, the way my understanding of how they've worked in the past, and I say all that disclaimer stuff because the ones that come out might be different, but in the past they've always been a point or two higher. When they reset to a rate that's a point or two higher than either the LIBOR or the Fed rate.
Right.
And then they'll adjust periodically after that. And the idea being that you refi out of it, pay off of this thing and take a new one at a lower thing. And that's why the saying goes, I think I'm getting this wrong, but like buy the house, not the rate, meaning that you're going to plan on refining when rates come back down, assuming they will.
Okay.
But I think, too, worth noting is during the last real estate downturn in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, to buyers, especially people who are renting, the rent went up every year. Rents rose, and they've been rising recently. I've been reading articles. When people lost their homes, demand went up. Supply didn't go up, so rents went up. Hard to believe they could go higher than they are now. I get it. Tough times. We used to talk to our buyers during the downturn, saying, why would you buy a house now when the market's depreciating? Mm-hmm. Because we all would think about this anyways. And the only people who would buy during the market depreciating really wanted to create stability in their lives. So if one wants to lock in a payment and not have their housing payment, whether you call that rent or mortgage, be not in one's own control with your life, it's either you're always paying a mortgage. It's either yours or not yours.
Right.
And so if life is volatile or fluid and you might be moving, well, then of course don't buy. That'd be crazy. But if you're thinking you're going to be there for 5 years and you want to lock in a payment and you want to have a garden or paint your walls some nutty color,
That's right.
or even grayish, whatever, buy a house.
Exactly.
If you're going to move or you like easy living and not fixing things, don't buy a house.
Don't buy a house. That's
So,
right.
Okay, that's my 2 cents.
That's your 2. That's a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. People are just really anxious right now in a completely different way than they were anxious 5 months ago. Crazy.
It's just different anxiety.
Yeah, different anxiety.
It's just different anxiety.
Shifting it different places. That's a lot of good advice. Hang in there and let's see what happens in the next few months. And hopefully next year it'll be a completely different beast altogether. Hopefully.
Yeah, and in closing, I would just like to say I'm looking forward to Halloween. Do you have a costume yet?
I do. Okay. What are you thinking? What are you doing?
Well, I've been going as tired dad for the last 12, 13 years, but no one likes it. No one's amused. And they go with my cup of coffee mug and my robe and my slippers walking around outside.
That's
right. I don't know. Everyone's pretty tired of that one. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, then we'll talk in a couple of weeks. It'll be the end of October, and we'll see if it's a completely different world out there in 2 weeks from now.
Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye, Michelle.
Thanks for listening to the Portland is Home Team Talking Real Estate podcast. For more info about Audra and Andrew, finding your next home, or selling your current home, visit their Realty Works website at realtyworksgroup.com and check them out on Instagram at Portland is Home. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. For help with your podcast, find us at Modcast Productions or modcastproductions.com.